welcome back. My name's Sam and today I'm going to be doing some editing. I'm going to be editing a book I wrote a couple of years ago. If you've seen any of my project videos, this is called Project Daydream. I wrote it a couple of years ago and it's been beta read before and I've had good responses from that. But the book focuses on maladaptive daydreaming, which is a problem that I've dealt with personally, and the book has not been read by anyone who also suffered from this problem. So it was quite important for me to get some beta readers who also experienced this, just to make sure that the book was not going to do any damage or just like not work with other people. Like, even though this is something that, you know, I felt I needed to write when I was at my lowest point and I had nobody to speak to, and it's a book kind of about group therapy, I still want to make sure that, you know, someone else would get something out of this if they are struggling. I gave the book to 3 beta readers and one's got back to me, which I think is quite good because I've had bad experiences with beta readers and a lot of times you don't get much of a response, especially if you know you're just kind of looking online. So anyway, I got really good beta feedback from one of the people that agreed to read the book, and the feedback was so good that like immediately I just started getting ideas about restructuring and how to edit and just different things that I wanted to do. Looking at this feedback, actually it pointed out to me a lot of things that I realised I was just attached to because they were the initial ideas that I had when I started writing the book. Like, I had an idea that I was going to do like 10 group therapy sessions and it would be 10 chapters and the chapters would be long. It would be like 6,000 words. I think I read a book at that time that had really long chapters, or it was really, I'm trying to think what book it was, but like it was almost like short stories. So that was kind of my idea, and I think, to be honest, when I'm thinking back to it now, I think it was like, because I wasn't feeling so creative at the time, it was like a crutch in order to help me write the book and help it not be like a majorly plotted book that I just could see, like, I'm going to write 6,000 words of this chapter, 6,000 words of this, 6,000 words of this, and it's in this specific format, and this is the format that's going to make it interesting, going to make it special. And each chapter was like, had a kind of quirky name about the therapy session. So because of this was one of my first initial ideas, I kind of realised I was holding on to that even when it didn't make sense. So when I was doing a writing course for this and I got to beta read, the teacher was saying to me, you know, your chapters are too long, and I think, you know, I was a little bit offended and like, well, you know, this is the style and I've chosen that. Like, I myself, when I'm reading books, I prefer short chapters. I know like almost everybody prefers short chapters, but I was really just like, no, this is the format and I'm keeping it like that. You know, I was just like quite stuck in this mindset because I think it was how I originally envisioned the book and I just wanted to keep it like that. Now, when I got this beta feedback back from this person who is also struggled with maladaptive daydreaming, she kind of pointed out, like, you're making a book about maladaptive daydreaming which you hope would be read by people who struggle with this, and these are people who struggle to stay in the present moment and to kind of concentrate and keep your mind on, you know, what you're doing, and you're going to give them this super long chapter that's really hard to focus on. And I was like, yeah, that's so obvious that I've made a mistake here. So it was just really interesting. I mean, she's told me something I've been heard before, she's told me something I've even kind of had my own doubts about, or like I knew was different about the book, but I thought that was kind of a selling point. And then as well, you know, one of these quirky chapter headlines, these quirky chapter headings actually are a bit of a spoiler for something that happens in the book. But I think I was feeling like, because it was quite a negative thing that happened, I almost felt like I needed to give people warning about it. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, because it's quite a sensitive topic, it's quite a sensitive book, and I didn't want to, it sounds a bit weird, like I didn't want to upset anybody, even though it's an upsetting chapter. I felt like I had to almost give a warning about that. I guess it was like a trigger warning in the shape of a chapter heading. Anyway, she said, you know, that kind of ruined the impact of it. And I think that actually totally makes sense, you know, if you're thinking about it like a novel where, you know, you want the element of surprise and you want what happens to have like the most emotional impact, that totally makes sense as well. So anyway, the reason that I'm excited today is that I now can see myself chopping this all up and restructuring it in a way that has like super short chapters. And I love books with super short chapters. Like my sister the serial killer had really short chapters which I really enjoyed. And then I was looking at another couple of books that I liked, which was Milk Fed by Melissa Broder and Bunny by Mona Awad, and both of these have quite short chapters, maybe like a few pages. And I was counting the words. I was doing like, I count my words and then I count just to see how many words are on it. So I think like the chapters are kind of between maybe 1,000 and 2,000 in general, but I noticed like her last chapter was really short. Actually, I don't want to spoil it, but it was really short. When I counted it up, it was kind of like between 500 to 1,000 words, and I think maybe that's what I'm going to try and do if it's possible. So I'm not sure how I'm going to break this up. And also, she told me she didn't like the beginning, and it was interesting as well because this beginning seemed to work for other people, but this pointed out to me that I haven't got a clear idea in my mind of who the target audience is. When I wrote this book, obviously, you know, I wrote it about my own experience about maladaptive daydreaming, and I wrote it, I felt it had to be written because I could never find any novels about this topic. I had never read a book about characters going through this, and this is, you know, it's got a group therapy setting, so there's quite a lot of characters going through the same thing, and that's really what I needed to write at the time. But I envisioned trying to get this book traditionally published, and for that I thought I need to have this have some appeal for other people. And I know like there's loads of books obviously people read about mental health problems that you know you don't experience yourself, but I almost felt like I had to make this, I suppose quirky is the word, or like I had to make you know, you have to make things entertaining, like that's obviously how you have to, but I think I veered too much into, you know, kind of like, I suppose something that was compared to was like Eleanor Oliphant, which is a book, to be honest, I don't particularly like because I find it too quirky almost. You know, it's hard to find the tone of books, and this is something I struggle with quite a lot, and I think it's a real challenge for a lot of people, you know, like trying to find that balance, particularly, you know, if you have like black humour, you want to have character, but you also want to make things feel real, and that is the challenge of characters and tone, and, you know, one sentence wrong or, you know, one scene that's not right, that can kind of ruin everything because it takes people out of the book and it makes you feel like, oh, these characters aren't real. Anyway, I started the book in a way, and this was another thing that was inspired the book, which I was holding on to, but in retrospect it doesn't make sense. So the book was kind of inspired by, I used to do drama classes in order to try and deal with my maladaptive daydreaming and become more present and have these like more present moments. But one of the activities we did was to like walk in a circle and just like walk around, and as I was doing that I was like, oh my god, like I'm just maladaptive daydreaming, and I had this vision like, oh, imagine we were all maladaptive daydreaming, like that would be cool. But this person pointed out to me, like, actually, you know, that would kind of be like their worst nightmares, like having to daydream in a room with other people. And I thought, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that either, even though, you know, that idea came to me, I suppose, like as something I wanted to do as opposed to what I was doing at the time. Anyway, I've had to kind of rethink that, and that was my opening scene, and I think I liked that for the fact it was intriguing, and if people didn't know about maladaptive daydreaming, then they would be like, oh, well, what's going on here? And it would seem like the characters were super interesting. But if my target audience is people who do maladaptive daydream, and I did want to write this book, not for the sole purpose, but I want a book to be out there that's a fictional book about maladaptive daydream, because to me like there doesn't really exist another one. So those people like are actually my main focus, but when I was writing the book I was making other people my main focus. So this opening scene I think would actually put people off if they do maladaptive daydream, but it would be intriguing to people who don't, because it's just like, well, what's going on here? There's kind of like a mystery. So I don't know, like it's just given me a lot to think about, and it's pointed out a lot of things to me that I was sticking to because they were the original impetus for the book, and they were a lot of my original ideas, and I didn't want to let go of them because I thought they were like what made the book unique. But I really think, having read this over, and I think that like the best beta feedback is usually like stuff that you know yourself, or it just like makes sense, and all of this makes sense, and it's just made me realise like I can actually chop up this book and I can rearrange this in a much different way, and that's quite exciting because I felt like this book was like a little bit stale, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this book? It's almost like it's not appealing enough to be traditionally published maybe, but it's also too kind of maybe too quirky or too leaning towards a wider audience, so it's not specific enough for people who maladaptive daydreaming. So I've got like a lot to think about, and I'm really excited. I just want to get into this. It's funny, like I got this beta feedback about a week ago, and then I went on holiday, but I was just like writing I was just like writing down all my notes, just about all my like restructuring ideas and different things, and I'm just really excited to get into this, which is great because obviously like I've been struggling a little bit to get into my new novel that I'm writing, so this is kind of going to give me a little bit of editing time, which I've not had in a while, and I really do enjoy editing because, you know, you've actually got something there you can work with. And like I said, I love small chapter books. I don't know why. I really don't know why I expect people to like read these super long chapters, and like why I thought this was such a good idea. So this should be interesting, and I'm going to head to a coffee shop now. It's about 10:25. It's a bit later than what I wanted to get out, but I just wanted to talk about this before I headed off. I'm going to go to a coffee shop. I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to start to, you know, just like play around with the structure and see what I can do and see how much I can get done. I got caught in a downpour. That's why my hair is completely frizzy now. But the good news is that I got a lot of work done. I was there for about 3.5 hours. I was completely in flow. I was just in it. I was in the editing zone. I was loving it. It was a really, really good session, and I'm pleased with what I've done. So I've done about 5 chapters, so I've broken up between chapter 1 and chapter 2, the old chapter 1 and chapter 2. I've made 5 new smaller chapters out of that. There wasn't really a natural end around that 500 to 700 mark that I thought maybe I would wanted to do. They did come to more of a natural end around 1500, which I think is okay. I wanted to keep it around 1500, below 2000. I think like that's reasonable. It's just a few pages in a book. I think that's the kind of normal small chapters that I quite like. So I'm quite happy. So I have changed the starting point of the book, and I've moved things around. I think it's going to orientate you quicker, whereas what I thought was a selling point of the story to begin with was that it was a bit disorientating and maybe people wouldn't really know what it was about, but having thought about this and having received the feedback and having kind of narrowed down, you know, who I want the audience to be, I think it makes more sense to do it like this. And it's not like it's going to be a surprise of like what's going on, because you're going to read that in the blurb and in the title as well. So yeah, I've got 5 new chapters, and you know, it's just been really natural. I've written like a few new small parts just to have new transitions and kind of, you know, join things together more naturally. So I'm really pleased with my progress so far, and I think it is going to be a lot more readable, just a lot more easy to read and a lot more enjoyable and just flow better. I think like I can already feel that just in the first 5 chapters. I'm feeling really inspired by this right now, and feeling really, I'm going to continue on like over the next couple of weeks and hopefully try and, you know, finish a whole new structure. This book I really don't know what to do with. Again, I don't know if it's too strange for traditional publishing, but I don't know if it would have an audience through self-publishing. So I'm in 2 minds with what to do with it, but what I want to do is just work through it, make it the best possible book it can be, make it more easy to read. The beta feedback that I got really had quite a lot of interesting points in it and a lot of things I hadn't thought about. So I'm going to go through and just look at all the plot points mentioned. You know, the person who did the beta feedback for me, like, just really provided a lot of great feedback, and it was all broken down into chapters, so it's going to be so useful when I go through and edit and just see all the points. I want to take on board all the points. And the thing about, you know, beta feedback is like I think, you know, you do know when something is correct, and then you also know, like, you know, she's pointed out a few things that doesn't make sense for her but it really makes sense for me, and in that sense I think I would keep it, because even though it doesn't make sense to her, it may make some sense to someone else who thinks more like me. I think that there is just a couple of little things like that I think I would keep, and then lots of different things that I think I will change because I completely agree with the feedback. So I'm happy with how things are going, and I'll continue to work on this over the next couple of weeks, and I'll probably update. So I'm pleased just now I have the Project Island, which is the book that I'm going to be first drafting, but I'm going to put that on hold for a couple of weeks while I do this edit, because I think this edit's more important so that I can get this book into a good place and then have a think of what I want to do with this going forward. So that is the plan. I'm really, really pleased with my progress today, and now I'm just going to relax. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!